share. So you should be seeing my title slide at the moment.
We do.
Okay, good. Boy, small victories this morning. So it's been said that I'm going to try to cover a little bit of the timeline, and I really want this my presentation to be a stimulus for a conversation as opposed to just me just plowing through it all. I would like for us to have, to the extent that we can here on Zoom, to use these charts to stimulate some discussion and answer questions that you may have. And I do want to, I know Sandrine's on, but I also want to give a hat tip to Sandrine, Kevin Riel, and Austin Roberts for a lot of the material that's going to be presented here. Without them, I just could not do my job. So, okay, that didn't work. Let's try that again. There we go. So a quick overview of the revised schedule and current activities. I want to give the science chairs a heads up on some of the near-term milestones that we're looking at, just so that, so those first 2 points are just so that you have a grasp of technically what the project is up to. And I think this kind of leads into a little bit with a future talk on a more project-oriented, bigger picture view of the timeline. And hopefully this will give you fodder for thought and questions later on. And then I do want to cover commissioning data releases. So I think we have converged on a plan with the early operations team. And then I want to spend some time discussing this opportunity for commissioning engagement from the community. This includes, of course, the science collaborations of which you are chairs. And then I'll finish off with a short statement about how the construction project plans or is planning to close out the construction phase and enter into operations. So those are the topics. So here we go. Oops. So this is a chart that Sandrine and Kevin and I have put together. It is a distillation of the more detailed plan that we are working to, but this is meant to give a big picture view of what we're up to now and what we need to do in the future. So this chart does not get us through the end of construction. I think the end of construction, the final phases with the integration of LSSD CAM, the validation verification surveys, the tail end, the very tail end of the project hasn't changed much at all, even in the era of COVID. It's just gotten moved later in time. But a lot of the interplay of systems leading up to the tail end, there's been some changes there. So I'd like to point out a few of those things to you, just so that you're informed. First one here is this. Are you guys seeing my cursor running around here? Because otherwise,
yes, we do.
It's really hard to point on Zoom.
We see.
Okay, so the telescope mount assembly, the TMA, is still the critical path of the project. You can see that in this timeline here, leading up to these salmon-colored activity boxes for the M1, M3 installation with the surrogate on the telescope mount. So this remains our critical path, and it also remains the area of probably our greatest uncertainty at this point. There's still a lot of uncertainty that's being driven by constraints in Chile due to COVID and getting critical resources into Chile to finish up the TMA. So the vertical red line is where we are today. So you can see that in the meantime, while we've been working on the TMA, we've been able to get other things done. We have a refresh on the dome completion. I hope you have seen some of the really great images of the outer covering of the dome being largely completed. But again, there's uncertainty there. We're entering into winter down in Chile. And so the work on the outer shell of the dome is going to slow down. It's not going to completely stop, but it will slow down. But that means the focus then goes on the inside of the dome, and the dome contractor will complete that work. But the dome looks like it's going to be May of 22 is when it's going to be a finished dome. And I said, in the meantime, we have been doing a lot of early integration tests. So this includes systems at level 3 with the active optics control. We've made a lot of progress under Sandrine's leadership. And one of the things that is maybe new, not sure what happened to my bullet here. Seems like I cut something off, but oops. We've talked about this in the past, but we've pulled forward in our schedule early integration activities with ComCam, the Pathfinder. So whenever I say Pathfinder, that's the refrigeration Pathfinder for cooling the science camera. And then the hexapod rotator, M2, M1, M3, and testing the system end to end. And when I say end to end, I mean taking an image with ComCam and transferring that all the way to NCSA, ingesting it into the file systems at NCSA, and making it available through the Butler. So that's what we've started that effort. Robert Lupton is leading a series of what we call integration milestones that sort of bring all these elements together. And so one of the things that's new since I think I last gave you guys and gals an update on the integration plan is this ComCam installation on the TMA. So one of the things that we've worked out with the TMA vendor to facilitate this early integration test is that we are going to have on, you'll see in a picture in a moment, ComCam fully integrated, ready to go, with components that are needed by the TMA vendor to finish off their work. So that means that ComCam ends up going up onto the TMA sooner than we originally planned. We still won't have mirrors in the TMA for getting photons to ComCam, but we will be able to start testing ComCam up on the TMA well in advance of what we originally planned to do. So right now, the activities that we are focusing on are this active optics software integration and this early integration INT with ComCam in parallel with the dome assembly contractors and the TMA contractor. So moving on. So this, you've seen a similar picture to this in the past, but I think this one is just a few days old at the moment. This shows what environment looks like at level 3. This is the service and maintenance area on the Summit facility. As I said, just a few days ago. So what you see here, going clockwise from the bottom, down here at the very bottom here, this is ComCam and the refrigeration pathfinder assembly. So it's running right now. We are able to take data with ComCam through our software interfaces. The refrigeration pathfinder is running at a limited capacity. We're still sorting out a few technical issues there, but it is running. And then moving upwards, again, going clockwise, you see this yellow cart here. This is the cart assembly. And oops, sorry. This is the cart assembly. This turquoise cylinder in the middle is what we call the integrator. And what's missing from this view that you may have seen in the past is at this sort of silver or metallic interface here. That's where the hexapod rotator goes. The hexapod rotator is currently has been removed and it's being serviced. We found some issues with the hexapod actuators, so we're servicing those. That'll be reinstalled, and then this ComCam refrigeration pathfinder assembly down at the bottom gets installed. So all of this stuff, all this intricate plumbing and cabling, it gets surrounded by a shroud, but it goes through down through the center hole. And this is the assembly that will go up onto the telescope mount. Behind this cart assembly, you see the M2 mirror cell assembly. And then to the right is the coating chamber and the washing station supports. And then we have the M1, M3 mirror cell and the steel surrogate mirror. So why I'm spending so much time on this is that we're using all of these pieces right now in their current locations to do the control and software integration testing before they go up onto the TMA. And so this is one example of how we've been using the COVID period to advance things as best we can. Let's see.
Chuck?
Yep.
Can I ask you, you made a comment that this will enable you to start testing ComCam well in advance of the expected timeline. Can I ask you to put something closer to a date into that statement?
So let me then say here, so ComCam goes on the mechanical assembly and optical, electrical, mechanical assembly here that will end up on this cart. It goes on the telescope mount September of 21.
Okay, very early.
And then if you, that was a good question to allow me to segue into some of this more detailed discussion. That the current telescope mount contract is due to be completed in February of 22. So that's effectively the way I like to describe it. That's effectively when the telescope mount vendor hands us the keys and say, "Good luck, you own it. Move forward." And so these two salmon-colored boxes here. This is testing of this mirror cell assembly with the steel surrogate. There's some control testing that we need to do. So that happens there. Then the green boxes are when, and so that's completed by April of 22. The green boxes then are the integration of the secondary mirror. And then, and that is roughly completed by June 22. And then once that's done, then we enter into a phase where we're transitioning from that steel surrogate here, this white thing, this white puck. We have to, obviously we need to replace that with the real mirror, the real glass. And that's this area down here, and that starts in June of 22. And that's several months worth of work. There's a lot of nitty-gritty detail stuff that has to happen. This is a long-winded way to answer your question, Fed, is that the current plan is that by September of 22, we'll have all 3 mirrors installed on the telescope and ComCam on the telescope. And so we can start putting photons either from the calibration system or from the sky all the way through the system. So that's a major milestone right there. This ready, what it says, ready for integrated optical test mid-September 2022. So that is a, that's the moment, that is the moment when we have all the mirrors and the glass installed in the telescope, we have ComCam running, and we can actually point this thing on the sky and get real photons. The next big milestone here is something we call engineering first light. The reason why there's a delay between when we have the optics installed and engineering first light is somewhat an arbitrary definition of what we call engineering first light. My definition of engineering first light is that we have images coming from ComCam that I would call, I'm going to use my air quotes here, press ready, something that we would not be ashamed to show the rest of the world that's saying, yep, this thing is working the way we want it to work. And so there's some engineering effort and that needs to happen between the very first photons we get and where I think we will be. We have basically a month and a half to sort of work out some of the wrinkles to the point where we can get an image that says, ta-da, look at this, we've done good. So
sorry, that's the engineering first light is the word public first light?
Yeah, well, with ComCam. So let's be really clear on
ComCam,
this.
sure.
This is ComCam. This is not the full LSST plan. But this is the first time we can show that the telescope optical system is working properly and producing decent images. And then one of the challenges we have faced because of some of the shuffling of activities due to COVID is the arrival of the science camera in Chile. And you see in this chart down here at the lower left, or sorry, lower right, the current schedule shows the LSST cam arriving in Chile right at the same time that we're doing this transition from the M1, M3 surrogate mirror to the glass mirror. So let me go back to this diagram here. So during that time period, when we're doing that transfer between this surrogate mirror on the M1, M3 cell and the glass mirror, this entire space that you see in this picture is going to be completely occupied. And so something that we're still, a logistical thing that we're still working out is how do we handle the arrival of LSST cam? Or, one option is to say, well, let's hold off on its shipment until we can actually receive it properly in Chile. So that's something that is still working out. But right now, that's a, you know, a logistical challenge is how to manage this space that you see in this picture during this time period down here. And it's interesting is that to a certain degree that some of the schedule and the planning in this time period is not technically driven, it's logistically driven. So just a quick update on the integration status. I think I've covered everything in Chile. We're getting a lot of good stuff. Oxtel was put on hold for a little while because of COVID restrictions, but we're in the process of starting the Oxtel nighttime observing back up. In Tucson, we're still working on the calibration integration and a software test stand. So this is a test stand that we can use to validate software before it goes to Chile. At Stanford, at SLAC, the INT, you can see I stole this chart from a different presentation. The INT work is progressing. The main items for the INT work right now is to get the, so that you probably are all aware that there's been some challenges with the cooling system on the camera. And they had a test setup that was giving problems, and now they're switching over to the system that would actually be used in Chile. And so that should be starting up soon. Another big activity actually is verifying that the shipping arrangements are within spec for the camera. So there's been some testing with the crate on a truck. A test setup is set up already inside a container, but for a variety of reasons, this has been on hold. But the plan is still to take this crate with this test setup and with a bunch of monitoring equipment, you know, ship it all the way down to Chile and back, just to verify that the control parameters are being met for shipping the actual camera when that time comes.
Chuck, what is INT?
Integration and test.
Of course, thank you. And the Oxtel is the auxiliary telescope, just to make sure that everybody catches up on all the names and acronyms, right?
Sorry for the
no, it's fine.
The shorthand.
It's my job to make sure that they're expanded.
Yeah, so at NCSA, we now have a fully operable system software test stand. This will eventually be moved to Chile to support operations. The Gen 3 Butler is being deployed. The Rubin Science platform is operating. And at the time this chart was made, we are now able to mirror the engineering facility database that is capturing all the technical data in Chile. We now have a mirror operating at NCSA, so that's good progress. And so in the pictures here, one of the other tests that's being run at SLAC, you see this in the upper right-hand corner, the filter exchange verification of the procedure is being done. Down at the lower right, you see the refrigeration pathfinder is plumbed, and as I said earlier, it's hooked up and running. The lower graphic plot here in the middle, bottom middle, shows the first time we turned on the cooling system in Chile, and it shows a healthy 30 C drop in the temperature in just a few minutes, and that will continue to run. I think I got a report this morning that they're now able to run this for multiple hours at a time without any problems. So that's good news. So upcoming events, I think I covered most of this stuff. So the little logic diagram on the left-hand side, I don't expect you to read every box, but I think the message I want to convey to the chairs here is that while the schedule may have changed due to COVID, the logic on how the pieces come together hasn't really changed much. So that's held pretty stable, and it's really helped us out in our planning. Sandrine is working on all these software integrations along with Robert on getting the pointing components, various simulators, and all these elements that I mentioned at level 3, getting all their software interactions tested. Robert Lupton is leading the way on some of these, what we call the integration milestones. I'll mention those in a moment, but it really is to use ComCam, at least initially, to take image data, connect that up with header services, archiver, and processing through DM pipelines as they stand today. And I think I already went over the card assembly and the ComCam Pathfinder enough. But this is really to push forward a lot of the underlying details that all the underlying infrastructure that needs to be in place to make sure that all this stuff works. Okay, key milestones that are coming up. So we're right now is the way I look at this is that we kind of there's kind of 2 classes of milestones. There's the technical milestones, and then there's the system integration milestones, which I just mentioned that Robert's working on. And the technical milestones are in many ways prerequisites for the system integration milestones. So we had planned to have by mid-June ComCam and Pathfinder fully integrated on the cart. That looks like it's going to be delayed a little bit, so it's probably going to be more like early to mid-July when that's ready. We are still on track for the 1st of October to have ComCam and Pathfinder up on the TMA. And while the TMA is not fully complete at that stage, it allows us to start working on some of our own testing, in particular the refrigeration system, getting the compressors up and running, getting the plumbing tested out, etc. So, and at this point, the TMA is ready for control testing. That means from a electromechanical point of view, the TMA is operable, and then we have the TMA control vendor there to start verifying the system control. Let's see, environmental awareness system, that's EAS. That should be, by October, that should be ready for testing and optimization. So that's, do we understand the conditions inside the dome that we're going to be observing in? And then in August, we should be doing scheduler-driven observations with Oxtel. That probably has been delayed a little bit because of the restrictions on summit access in Chile due to the COVID. And then we're still looking at somewhere around early February of 22 is when the first time that we get M1 M3 on the TMA. So that requires the TMA contract to be complete and the M1 M3 software to be ready and stable. So the system integration milestones, these are milestones that we're using to where we do cross subsystem integration activities. So some of this has been covered: ComCam image capture, archiving, ComCam image processing with the observatory control system processing. So what the OCPS is that when you say you send a script to ComCam or LSST cam to gather a stack of data, that triggers a process then at NCSA or the US data facility to process that block of data as a coherent image set. And then so some of these dates are going to be, are getting, again, a lot of it is in flux because of restrictions in Chile, but I think we're mostly on track. So so we decided to combine integration milestone 1 and 2 into one. That should be by the end of this month. And then the final one, or the next one, it won't be the final one. The next one is slated for June of 21. So very quickly, other dates to watch for the science chairs. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this announcement of opportunity. We have our rebaseline review that's coming up here in just a couple of weeks, June 15 through 17. You all probably know about the community workshop that's planned for the 9th through the 13th of August. Then the project itself gets to go through a status review in September. And then we get another Aura Management Council review immediately following. And the reason the date here is set by preceding the Aura board meeting, so that any last minute updates that need to be presented to the Aura board are provided. And as you can see right now, every single one of these meetings is virtual. So we're still not planning any in-person meetings at this point. Okay, I'm sure this is probably of more interest to most of the chairs than what I was spending too much time on. Data, looking long-term on commissioning data. So what the strategy we have converged on is that we will have these things called data previews, which I believe you've heard about. If not, let me introduce you to data previews. The first two, data preview 0.1 and 0.2, are the first one is simulated data from desk DC2, and same with DP 0.2. That's also desk data challenge 2. That's what DC2 stands for, with a little bit more fidelity to it. So you can see these check marks here that indicate the level of fidelity. And that's the first one is coming up here in September. Next one is in June. And then it gets to the on-sky data during the commissioning phase. So this is DP1. So that's data preview 1, and data preview 2 is with the on-sky data from LSST CAM. So currently, the target date for DP1 is March of 2023. And then the current release of LSST CAM commissioning data is targeted for December of 2023. That's DP2. And by the time we get to DP2, we have almost all the data products checked off here, except for the last one. I don't remember what SSP catalog stands for. And then after that, so this is now by December 2023, we will have started operations at that point on the current plan. And then we're looking at operations data releases. So one last thing I will mention here is that these data previews are all being supported by the early operations effort. So the way this is going to work is that the commissioning team, the commissioning effort, will acquire data, and the commissioning team will use it for its own technical purposes, and then make that data available to the early operations team. And then it's the early operations team that will handle the data previews. So maybe now is probably a good time to take a quick pause, because I'm see if there's questions. We haven't.
SSP, if you were lost on that in the chat, it's solar system processing catalogs.
Okay.
And the data release processing products in DPs, and maybe Phil, sorry, I'm waiting for Phil to finish the sentence, but the data release processing for the difference image analysis in DP02 are still TBC. That was the acronym that I was actually stuck on.
Yeah, to be confirmed. So you see there.
Confirmed, of course.
You see in DP 0.2, this is an earlier version. The last I saw after it was checked by user et al. Is that they can't commit to doing difference image analysis, providing those outputs for DP 0.2, but they're trying, and we'll get confirmation of that in June, I think. I'm still hopeful.
Yeah, sorry, Phil, I didn't realize I was using an obsolete chart.
No worries. This is sort of fresh work in progress. It's nice to share it to get some feedback.
And so I see that one of them has PP alerts live brokered. So this involves third-party products, right? So third-party software. It involves the brokers. So is the coordination already ongoing to achieve these brokered alerts by that data release? And is it how many? The brokers are not confirmed yet. So what is it expected that it will be all the brokers that will eventually be able to broker data?
I can attempt to channel Eric Belm for you here if you like.
Thank you.
So I think the idea is that they want to be helping all the selected brokers develop to the point where they can do their thing prior to and include and as part of the DP2 processing and so on. So that's why live brokered alerts are listed there for DP2. The idea is that a small test stream would be provided to the selected brokers, and they would then broker them and put them out, and all to commission themselves. Now that alert stream may not be very useful for science, but it would be vital for the brokers, getting to the point where we need them to be and showing that they work.
Okay. Couple of questions in the chat. Do live alerts mean real-time release of alerts during sustained LSST CAM commissioning observations? This was asked by Graham.
So let me see if I can take a stab at that one. I think the short answer is no. We will not have generally live alerts during LSST CAM commission. That said, a key element of the final science validation surveys at the end of commissioning is to conduct a survey, or what we used to call mini survey, to demonstrate we can do live alerts. So the current plan is that we would use some of the science validation survey time at the end to produce templates over a limited area of the sky. And then once those templates are produced, then we would re-observe that area of sky and generate alerts. And that will be, because we, from a technical point of view, we absolutely have to validate that we can produce alerts meeting our latency requirements and performance requirements. So, and then there, and Phil, maybe you can help me out here. There's still some ongoing discussion on how to optimize the startup of the survey operations in year one to facilitate the production of real-time alerts.
Yeah, let me emphasize that real-time alerts are pretty, they're really very critical for the community because there's only that much that can be done even with precursor surveys, right? So the community and my community, TVS in particular, is eager to see live alerts so that we can work on the downstream analysis. So that's really important, even if they are with the understanding. And I know that one of the concerns was that you cannot guarantee high quality alerts. But I think that the community, at least the science collaborations community that has been very involved with the construction and with the evolution of the project, will be very sensible in understanding that alerts may be substandard for a certain amount of time, but will still be extremely useful for us to have.
Right.
To have them and to build, the downstream pipelines.
So there was another question here from Perry. Are the dates given the earliest time alerts can or otherwise be generated? And I would say short answer is yes. All dates are sort of early as possible, given the uncertainties I mentioned at the very beginning with some of the technical schedules.
There is also a question from, and Graham is seconding my comment about the importance of having the alerts from another science collaboration, the Strong Lens in Science Collaboration. And Meg had a question about the solar system data products, and there's been a back and forth with Željko. Meg, do you want to ask it?
Yeah, it might be great. It might be one of those, it's a comment more than a question. But if you look at this, the only time the solar system people are going to key in is March 2023. And if you're actually starting in 2024, it's a community that's going to be quite behind other groups that have played with the other catalogs, because it's very hard for us to play with things that have no relevance to our science case, right? And so I'm just wondering, as in terms of strategy of project, the community engagement team and the SSP team, of how you're going to help us get up to speed, because we're going to need a lot more help in 2023, March 2023, than some of the other science collaborations, because you'll have people asking about what's in the force source catalogs, because it's going to be very hard to get people to look at them ahead of time. So just more a question of, has anyone started thinking about how you're going to support the community during this time period, and that you might need to allocate a little bit more time towards solar system folks in when this first data release comes out? And I'm not sure, and who that is that the SSP team, or is that project, the community engagement team?
And I think that's a fair point, primarily for the solar system, it looks like we will get data products last, but also going a little bit backwards for the alerts, right? The latest the alerts are released in the format in which they will be released during the survey, the more support that community will also need to catch up. So I think that's a very valid point, that perhaps more support can be provided to community that can will necessarily have access to data products that are relevant to them later.
So Phil, I think that's an action on the early ops team.
Mm-hmm.
Phil was nodding the entire time.
Yeah, and I think the group for us to talk about is the community engagement team, to work with them on strategy for supporting the solar system community. Yeah.
So we have roughly 10 minutes left, and I suspect the next topic is related to this one, and we'll probably easily use up the remainder of our time. So I'd like to move on if that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Seems like a good idea.
So the next topic is very much related to what was just being discussed. So it's community engagement with commissioning. We've talked about this in multiple fora about how we might do this, what role can the community play in being involved in commissioning. And so I think we've been sort of dancing around this issue for quite some time, multiple years at this point. And I think we're at a point now where we need to put pen to paper and get something concrete out. So here's where we're at. Myself and others of the commissioning team, in particular Keith Bechtel, has been helping me out a lot in drafting what we term as an announcement of opportunity to become part of the commissioning team. And the objectives here are we recognize that the community at large has a lot of expertise to offer to extend and provide value-added elements to our planned commissioning effort. So that's number one, is that we are seeking you know, expertise from the community. But this requires, you know, a commitment to work with the commissioning team to advance the commissioning effort as needed and as directed. What you get out of this is early data access. So if you know, these data previews that Phil was covering are predicated on, you know, some delay. There is a delay for this March date and December date from when those data previews are made available from when the data are actually acquired. And so the intent, or actually the carrot, if you will, is that getting yourself integrated into the commissioning team means you have the same data access to the commissioning data as anybody else on the project, on the construction project. And this also, you know, I think relevant to the conversation we're just having, it provides some training opportunities to start getting up to speed on how to handle the data and the tooling that in the way that the data will be made available. So I beg your patience on this. So the timeline here is the announcement of opportunity. It will go out in June. That's next month. I am planning on holding with Keith and others on the project a Q&A session during the community workshop, so that once you have a chance to digest the announcement of opportunity, you can come to this, you know, it may be more than one session, right? I suspect that we may want to allocate more than just an hour to it. But, you know, there you can pepper us with questions, and hopefully we'll give you good answers. And then we're going to look at responses to come in by the end of September. And then the project will provide a response to those proposals. It's basically a proposal to saying, okay, I'm willing to commit X or Y to support you. You know, to be fully, you know, blunt, you know, we are not going to be able to support every single proposal. So, but we want to be able to, you know, do this in a strategic way that helps not just us, but also helps the general community getting up to speed. And so we have a draft document. So you see the outline of the document here. We are close to convergence on this document. And I think we'll be on track to putting this out there for you and others to read and respond to. So that's the strategy for getting sort of direct engagement from the general scientific community in commissioning. One of the things that we are trying to be explicit about in the announcement is, what skill sets are we after that would help us out, and again, an indication of some level of commitment. So I will stop there. I'm sure there's lots of questions that go along with this.
There are, oh, sorry, I was on mute, I was unmuted, so you could hear me type. I apologize about that. There are a few questions in the chat. What constraints would apply to somebody who joins the commissioning team following the announcement of opportunity? In particular, if they're a member of a science collaboration, can they share their findings with the other members of the science collaboration, solicit input, show plots, etc.? This was asked by Rachel M.
That's an excellent question, or series of questions. So we haven't, that's one of the areas we're still struggling with on, I think sharing of plots, sharing of intermediary results, I think is probably okay, but I think that's one of the last stages of trying to work out exactly what the boundary is between, if you're part of the commissioning team, what you can share outside. Keith and I have been leaning towards a softer, fuzzier boundary rather than a hard boundary. But certainly, sharing of, full catalogs and full data, that kind of goes against, the constraints and guidelines we've been given.
Another question, how many proposals do you expect and how many do you think can be accepted? This was asked by Catherine.
Yeah, so Fed, let me ask your question first. Is there any kind of financial support, travel, stipend plan for this? Who is sponsoring it? So we have, let's see, again, that's an excellent question. Do we have support for stipends? Short answer to that is no. And I know it's not an answer I really am happy to give, but I think that's just where we are. Do we have budget and financial support for travel? Yes. So if it means traveling to Tucson to work with the team here in Tucson, or traveling to SLAC to work with the team at SLAC, or even traveling down to Chile, we have a certain amount of budget available to support that.
Is it something that an organization, any organization, but I have some in mind in particular, could pursue fundraising for? Would that be okay with Rubin if an organization was able to secure funds to support the commissioning effort?
Now I'm going to have to wear my commissioning a lawyer hat. If the support is for value added effort and not replacing or supplanting budgeted and planned work on the construction project, then I think it's okay. We have to be really careful. I mean, this gets into a really fuzzy territory.
Okay.
We have to be careful that we're not trying to raise money or supply effort that is replacing what was already budgeted on the construction project.
Understood. I understand that this is delicate, so I propose that we talk more about it in a separate venue. Catherine, what is your expectation for the number of proposals and the number of proposals that you think you can accept?
Well, that's a good question. How many do I expect? Quite honestly, I don't know. I have no idea what kind of response we will get. What can we support? So again, this is something that we're going to try to be explicit about in the announcement document is, so there is a tension here that I feel on the construction side that yes, we want help, but I can't have 20 or 30 individuals or groups plus individuals. And so somehow we're gonna have to figure out a way to keep the number of contacts to a manageable level. And so, but that doesn't mean that, so like for one point of contact, that one point of contact may represent, multiple people on the other side. And so I don't have a good feel for right now, but I would say I would like to keep it less than 10 or 10 or less points of contact, just to pick a number out of thin air, that's has a significance of one figure.
Do you mind me following up on that then? So that would be roughly 1 point of contact per science collaboration. Would it be easier for you then if the science collaborations collect first a set of proposals together? Because if you are evaluating everybody separately, it sounds
absolutely. Absolutely. If the science collaborations could, within their own domain, coordinate a single response to the announcement of opportunity, that is much preferable than getting 20 different responses.
Okay, great.
Let me curb your enthusiasm on that. That requires a tremendous amount of effort on the science collaborations, and particularly the science collaborations that have zero administrating funds, which are all but one, have a very hard time doing this. So don't hold your breath for a single announcement from most science collaborations. Sorry, for a single proposal, but I will definitely bring this back to the science collaboration chairs and encourage them to
I understand.
plan for some coordination.
No, I get it. Looks like Pat has.
Jenna also, just for clarification on this, Jenna also commented there might be people that are not connected with the science collaborations that may want to submit proposals, and that's a fair comment, I think.
Yeah, and that's something that we, that I'm aware of, right? There's going to be responses from coordinated groups. There's going to be responses from institutions that pull together, and then there's going to be responses at the individual level. And we'll have to work that out. But and I'm not sure so if we, for example, if we get a bunch of individual responses, what I would try to do is take like proposals and pull them together and make them sort of an ad hoc group. So then I can identify, within that ad hoc group, one person that, okay, you're going to coordinate the rest of these people. And I know it's tough that it is really hard because of, we don't have funding to say, I'm going to pay 25% of your time to put in this effort. And that's unfortunately, that's just the situation that we happen to be in.
I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second to say that it is 1:05. So I want to acknowledge that we're running past the hour. If you have time for us, I would like to continue with those that can stay. And remember that there is also a recording of this. So if you have to go, you can watch the recording. We have a few questions that have already been asked, and I would like to at least get to answer those. Is that okay, Chuck, with you?
Yeah, I can stay for a few more minutes. I'm running overtime myself, but no, I think this was pretty important, so I'd like to.
I appreciate it. So let's move on then to the questions. Pat, you were about to ask a question.
Yeah, maybe I'm confused, but can you clarify the difference between a point of contact and someone who responds to the AO?
So let's use the science collaborations as a test case here. So if, say, the Milky Way group replies and they want to coordinate some contribution with either the entire collaboration or a subset of the collaboration, we are requiring or requesting, there be one person that the commissioning team would interface with. So that's the point of contact. So if we need, for example, let's say we come up with a set of tasks to say, we want you to examine this data set for photometric repeatability, just pulling stuff out of my head. I want to be able to go to a single person and say, here's the outline of the task that we need to get done. Then it's up to that point of contact to work within their group to get that work accomplished. I don't want to have to manage, right? In fact, I want to say I don't want to. I cannot manage individuals if we have 6 or 7 or 8 groups, and each group is half a dozen people. There's no way I can manage at the individual level. I have to be able to work with a point person for each group.
So more than the point person has access to the data, though?
No, but so the intent here is that you would form a group. You put in your response to the AO. If the response is accepted, then that whole group has access to the data. But the coordination between that group and the commissioning, the rest of the commissioning effort, is done through a single person. Does that make sense? That makes sense, Pat?
I guess so. I assume it's going to be written down, so we'll see. But yeah.
And we can also probably help you write it down in a way that makes sense from our point of view as you prepare the announcement. I will be happy to see that it's written in a way that it makes sense for the science collaborations to respond. Graham had a question about the commissioning, how the commissioning relates to the in-kind contributions.
So I guess I'm not quite sure I understand that question.
It's similar in spirit, but this AO applies only to the US and Chilean scientists that have data rights. This is not a way around in-kind contributions for some new team from outside of US and Chile to apply to this AO and then get into commissioning team by bypassing the international contribution process. This is only for the US and Chile.
Thanks, that clarifies. So that means that we should continue. So we should continue to go ahead with the with a separate call process within the UK that we've discussed on and off as part of the in-kind process.
Correct. This is giving an equal opportunity to the US and Chilean scientists as people who responded to the international call.
Will is asking, how does the announcement relate to previous round of commissioning notes already solicited? Are you looking for help from the community in interpreting the recommendation in the commissioning calls?
Okay, so let's see. How does this? Oh, okay. So, so Will, I think to answer your question, so I think the initial call for input was sort of to help inform and provide suggestions to the commissioning team for what the content of the commissioning data would have. So, so I think to answer your question in very simple terms, those two things are independent. So the initial call that I think Keith coordinated was to say, basically, if we were to look on a piece of sky, or we were to look at a piece of sky in a certain way, what would be scientifically of interest and useful? And that input has been really valuable to us to start laying out what the observing plans look like. And so this is sort of independent of that. So basically, that input is going to help us inform what the data content is for DP1 and DP2. This call is, given our commissioning strategy, is, an opportunity to dive in and get your hands dirty and work with the data in real time.
Okay,
Go ahead. Go ahead, Will.
I was just saying thank you for the clarification. That helps.
All right.
Will, did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
I think, Pat, so Meg made a comment that it would be helpful to have examples in the announcement, and Jaco confirmed that you're working on it. And Pat, you have another question?
So, Fed, let me just really quickly point out, if you look at the bottom of the outline in Appendix A, there's example contributions.
Excellent.
And that is, yes, Keith and I have been spending quite a bit of time to provide some guidance, right, as to what would be a useful response.
That's great. Pat, I think the last question that I see.
Sure. My question was, for example, if a PI would like to commit a postdoc to doing this and plans to search for a postdoc who has exactly the right skills for helping with commissioning, who writes the proposal, the postdoc or the PI who actually has the funds that they can commit to support the postdoc, especially if the hiring is in process, say?
In that example, Pat, I would say it's the PI that puts in the response. Because ultimately, right, it's going to be the PI that's going to be responsible for supporting the work. And, so, in this instance, for example, it is going to be a much stronger response if a PI says, first of all, I have this postdoc, I'm already supporting this postdoc, and this postdoc is really great and has all these wonderful skills. That's a really strong response. The second strongest response is, I have money and I have, resources to hire a postdoc, and I am planning to hire a postdoc with this set of skills to help support you. That's also a fairly strong response. What's not a strong response is saying, well, I would really like to hire a postdoc, and I'm going to go out and submit a grant request so that I can support this. That's,
Tom is asking for a clarification on what Phil and Jelko indicated, which is that the announcement is only for the US and Chilean community. So can you confirm that the international community with data rights is still not able to respond to this announcement? Did I break everybody?
Joko, do you want?
I was expecting Chuck to reply. I think this is only for the US and China community.
I missed the question. Was it to me? Someone mentioned Jelko.
Yes, it was to you and Phil. I think Phil answered. So this is exclusively for the US and Chilean community. It does not include the international community, even the data right holders in the international community. Is that correct? There are no data right holders yet on this.
That's a good question. There are some international proposals that contributed commissioning contributions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whether we would give them another chance to do the same, I don't know. Maybe Phil has opinion on that.
Yeah, so this call is for the US and Chilean communities. But Chuck, I think because of this question, I think we should write a little note in it that just says, you know, international teams that are interested in contributing to commissioning, there is an opportunity to do that through the in-kind program, but they should get in contact with the in-kind program coordinators if they want to extend their program in that way. I'm guessing we won't get much more international interest because we already scooped it up through the in-kind.
So I guess Joko responded earlier that, you know, this call is in some ways to provide equal opportunity to the US and Chilean community. I mean, the international community already had an opportunity through the in-kind announcement. And we want to make sure that our US and Chilean colleagues have the same opportunity.
Yeah.
All right, I think I offered all the questions to you and we got answer to all the questions. I'm going to give 3 seconds to see if there is one urgent answer that was not obtained. And I'm looking. Jelko will revisit the question and we'll make sure that they're all answered offline. We are quite late, but I think I'm grateful, Chuck, that you contextualize the commissioning in a timeline for the project start. I think it was very helpful and we appreciate your time and your extra time and everybody else's as well. So we'll be back next month.
I appreciate everybody's attention and their excellent questions, and I hope they were answered satisfactorily.
I think so, and we will definitely keep up with you if they were not. I'm sure that we will ask you more questions as time gets closer to the announcement of the commission.
I'm at your service.
And at the same time, we are at your service. So if you, to the extent that we are capable of doing that within the constraints of, you know, the usual constraints. But if you have anything that you want us to look at before the announcement goes out, please share it with the science collaboration chairs. We can function as a vetting group.
Okay, so actually, since you mentioned that, Fed, one thing that, you know, in addition to making this announcement available to the science chairs, some advice from the science chairs on which venues we should be making this announcement on.
Perfect. I will try to collect this.
That would be some useful input.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
See you in June.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.